Number 43, the Dunning-Kruger effect. I feel like I've heard of this one before. A cognitive bias that leads people of limited skills or knowledge to mistakenly believe their abilities are greater than they actually are. Ooh, thanks to teaching tolerance for this definition. Example, quote, I know Washington was the father of his country and never told a lie. Pocahontas was the first Native American. Lincoln freed the slaves. Hitler murdered 6 million Jews. Susan B. Anthony won equal rights for women. And Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. Moses parted the Red Sea. Caesar said, et tu, Brute. And the only reason America didn't win the Vietnam War, hands down, like we always do, was because they tied our generals' hands and the politicians cut and run. See, why do I need to take a history course? I know everything about history. That's funny.
Yeah, this one's
Okay.
great. So, really quick, can
Yeah.
you? I made you co-host. Do you mind sharing your screen and Googling Dunning-Kruger effect? Because there's an actual graphic that is really helpful in understanding this, and it's the measurement between how much education somebody has on a particular topic, and then the other axis is that person's confidence in their knowledge in that topic.
Yeah. Yep.
And
It's something I've seen frequently.
yeah, and something that we know is that confidence scientifically does not correlate with uh, accuracy.
My favorite piece of this thing here is the peak of Mount Stupid.
Oh yeah,
The peak of Mount Stupid. Oh man. No, this is huge. Slope of Lyman Plateau sustainability. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is the yeah, and by the way, like it's interesting. I've been shown this particular thing so many times over the course of my process of personal development, and it was primarily to prevent people from quitting when they hit the valley of despair. Understanding that beginnership and being new and not knowing what you're talking about or becoming aware of how little you know, oftentimes the valley of despair causes people to give up entirely because they're like, oh, they can't handle the ego hit of going from I know everything to I know nothing. And then they go, wow, I don't want to keep trying anymore because I prefer to know everything. And then you end up developing narcissism because you're like, oh, I want to only go into spaces and places and environments where I know everything. And I never want to go anywhere where I know nothing. And I don't want to become aware of knowing nothing. So I will avoid situations that have me feel like I know nothing, and I will only read into things at the surface because if I go deeper, I'm going to find I know nothing. That's not allowed. So I'm going to keep myself in a perpetual state at the peak of Mount Stupid. So it's a definitely a powerful one for sure.
I've seen versions of this graph where the plateau of sustainability does not reach the same level of confidence that the peak of Mount Stupid has, and that the peak of Mount Stupid is the highest your confidence could ever possibly get on any
Mm.
particular topic. Um, but again, the graph is not like a scientific graph.
Right.
There's many versions of this, but it's essentially this.
Yeah.
Um, what I see a lot of this is when it comes in science, when people start learning about a particular topic. If they just hear the rundown, super basic version of something, they will be on the peak of Mount Stupid because they understand that elevator pitch sentence of whatever scientific discovery very well. But then as soon as you attempt to start learning more about the science, um, like when it comes to like equations and whatnot, when it comes to like quantum mechanics, you very quickly realize, holy fuck, I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. And then and then hopefully you should find yourself on the slope of enlightenment. Um, yeah, and I would say that, to my understanding of where most scientists are, They they feel like they're somewhere in between the valley of despair and the slope of enlightenment, but they never, even though they could be the most uh, critically acclaimed scientist, they have such a high level of honesty that they're like, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty confident this is the case, but there's still a lot to learn. Will
Yeah.
be like their highest level of confidence. And that is not matched by the person on Mount Stupid that's like, I know everything about quantum mechanics. And like they have absolutely no idea. Like you need to be a mathematician to even like begin uh in quantum mechanics, true comprehension. It's no. There's a reason it's on the frontier of scientific understanding.
I got that. To me, there's actually, you mentioned the peak of Mount Stupid being a higher level of confidence than someone who's developed competence to the point where they're in the plateau of sustainability. I would actually, to me, in my experience of it, and this doesn't mean this is true, but in my experience of my own process, especially in personal development, speaking, coaching, etc. Um, can you hear that dog? That dog is obnoxious. Oh my goodness. Okay. Um, the for me, I found that the plateau of sustainability to me surpasses the confidence level of Mount Stupid in the sense that I've been in situations before where I've had people challenge me in mid training. So, as an example, one of the things that I'll come back to you so you guys can see my face. Yeah, I had a training that I ran once where I was talking about in entrepreneurship and specifically in purpose-driven entrepreneurship, where you're wanting to build a business that is connected to your life purpose, connected to your life mission. That 100% commitment is going to be necessary in order to make that successful for various reasons. And somebody came on the thing and they said, I disagree. And I said, interesting. Okay. Didn't know this was up for debate, but we can talk about it. And this person was like, I think there are plenty of people who can make it by with 60% commitment, no problem. And in my going and building my own business, I have with myself and also with others who have also sustained and built successful businesses. Something that is consistent is that whether they were at a low level of commitment or not, in order to get where they were, they had to cultivate a complete 100% all-in buy-in at some point, whether it was because they had to go do financial fundraising and they never had before, and they had to overcome some level of fear and they had to remain even higher committed to what they were doing, whatever it might be. Usually running a business, getting a mission out there requires a consistent facing of our fears, which requires a consistent increasing of commitment over time. And so when this person says, I think there are plenty of people who make it on 60% committed, because life happens and it gets hard. And this person was fairly confident. They because the way they framed the beginning of their response was, I'm being more cavalier than they were. They were like, no, I think this is how it is. And for me, now having run a business, my own business for the last 2 years, but having run multiple of my own businesses and having been doing this coaching thing for the past 10, I'm like, nope. I was like, I have seen through absolute experience that without a question, that 100 being 100% committed is necessary. Otherwise, you will get eaten alive. And so, as gently as I could, but with a grounded certainty, I was like, I hear what you're saying. I totally understand where that may be coming from. And respectfully, if you're not 100% committed, if someone is not 100% committed, they will run at the first sign of trouble. And because of the confidence that I had in that moment was more grounded. It wasn't so aggressive. It wasn't so intense. It wasn't so malinformed. It was actually very just like, boom, this is what it is. In that moment, the person actually didn't fight back or whatever. They were like, I okay, no, I could see that. And they changed their tone. But you would look at them, and at the time when I said that and when they said it, it would have looked like our confidences were at the same level. And it's like, no, I am more confident than you that 100% is necessary to run a business, period. And it came from the experience side of things. So for what it's worth, I think that over time, And of course, this doesn't happen instantly, but I believe over time, the kind of grounded confidence that is developed in the what was it? It was the plateau of sustainability. I think is unshakable and unmatched next to anybody who is at the peak of Mount Stupid, thinking they've got the biggest, most brightest, powerful flag in the world. Is my personal take.
Okay. Very well. I mean, I could argue that maybe he was somewhere in between the peak of Mount Stupid and
That's
maybe just
true.
edging into the Valley of Despair. You know, you don't know if he was on the peak of Mount Stupid.
That's true. I don't know if they were on the peak of Mount Stupid. And maybe if they were at the peak, maybe they would be like, no, and they would have just left. I have no idea. That's a good point.
Yeah, maybe them being part of your seminar was them diving into the Valley of Despair to so uh yeah, again, that graphic, while the phenomenon we know scientifically exists, there's different versions of that graphic where I've seen the plateaus to sustainability below. But anyways, I don't think that matters nearly as much. But all right, I think we're good. We're good on Dunning-Kruger effect.